What we have is a sense of urgency. And it's important because time is not a friend. By April, if we don't control the events will set the stage. And we all understand that February and March are crucial, either to open a new chapter or the unintended consequence of inaction would be very costly for all of us.
What do you mean when you say if you don't control the events by April, something terrible could happen? What could unfold in Afghanistan? Because it's already terrible, dark days, Afghans are saying.
Yes, of course. We have had to fight for our survival.
So what could happen in April if there are not
talks
with the Taliban?
Because there will be
relationship?
intensification of conflict, and it would have consequences for others.
Others as?
Because the conflict is the two
region,
sides. There are
Pakistan.
two wars. The war in Afghanistan is just one component of a war. Pakistan is at war. And you need to cover this. Daily, the Pakistani army, after having amended its Army Act, after the Prime Minister having amended the Constitution and its National Action Plan Against Terrorism, is using force. But force, because the problems are interrelated, it cannot be solved by use of force in one country.
What are you asking of Pakistan?
Engagement, commitment.
You said you've been very angry, you've expressed your anger that they haven't kept their promises to move against the Taliban groups that are based in Pakistan and carrying out attacks in Afghanistan.
We cannot behave like teenagers. We have to focus on interests that are mutual, because if you display anger, the anger becomes the issue. What we are insisting on is principle, engagement, mutual benefits. Our part of the world suffers from the fact that there are no rules of the game. Government behave as though they're malign non-state actors, etc. This has to stop.
But Pakistan is also saying it has to stop on your side. General Raheel Sharif has said that the attacks, the most recent terrible attack in Sharsada, was mobilized from Afghanistan.
But who are the people who mobilized it? They are the ones who were displaced by Pakistan's 182,000 strong army operating along the Durand line.
But it was very
the unintended consequence. Pakistan's military action has brought about a displacement of terrorist groups.
Now you have a war against the so-called Islamic State, Daesh, where they carried out for the first time an attack in cities, in the eastern city of Jalalabad. How big of a threat do they now pose to your order?
I had warned about this at the very beginning of 2015, that if Al-Qaeda was version 1, with all due compliments to Microsoft, Daesh was version 5. We have, particularly in the last week, had very significant focus on Daesh and have managed to inflict very severe damage on them. But again,
but
the
they're
phenomenon...
still there. A BBC team has been to Jalalabad.
No, of course they're there. But this, again, because we had to fight a war of survival, we could not focus as we had intended in the early stages. Daesh is 4 stages: orient, organize, decide, and act. And we had caught them at the stage of decision, first attack on them in Zabul. And that really put them on the defensive. But once we were fighting across the country, they had the opportunity.
The Taliban, with greater frequency and force, have been able to penetrate what's called the Ring of Steel around Kabul. What stops the Islamic State from penetrating that ring as well?
The difference is that Daesh has alienated the people to a remarkable degree. In Jalalabad, 700 former commandos that had retired from the army joined. We didn't have to spend a single penny on their training, and they've taken the action forward. Their atrocities, their pathological behavior to capture the news. Daesh is oriented towards making news and dominating headlines. There is the will, but of course, we're vulnerable because both new elements were added in all the elements. And the combination of these produced an environment that was full of threats. What needs to be simultaneously understood, that almost with every threat, our security forces, within a relatively short period, have managed to regain the initiative and push them back. But there's no denial that we are dealing with very significant risks, and hence the need for action on the national level, the regional level, and international level.
Do you feel the international community is paying enough attention to Afghanistan? They're so focused on what's happening in Syria and Iraq?
No, the international community is paying attention. Look, last year we were dealing with uncertainty. President Obama's decision in October to renew the engagement at the existing scale, Chancellor Merkel, Prime Minister Renzi, Prime Minister Cameron, everyone else, Australian, Canadians, everybody has joined the commitment of 14 nations to renew the Resolute Support Mission is an enormous statement of support and understanding.
What do you say to the fact that the Taliban have come back and are able to control large swathes of your territory? And of course, you pay the greatest price.
In the first 6 months of the year, we had complete initiative in Helmand and consolidated. The second 6 months, they threw everything they had at Helmand. The desire was to create a politically divided geography, but we've contained it.
British forces, special units had to come back in to help you in Helmand. There were US airstrikes. Do you believe that Britain should come back and help Afghanistan again in a more significant way?
British help is always welcome.
Military?
All dimensions of the support, because we are very solid partners. The government of Afghanistan and the people of Afghanistan are very clear that the Western world are our foundational partners, in Japan and Australia and Canada included in this. And everyone who's joined the Resolute Support Mission is getting our sincere thanks and appreciation.
You mentioned April. What has to happen before then is talks with the Taliban, and yet they are so deeply divided, and some are making it clear day in, day out, they want to keep fighting. Where is your hope?
Well, first, if they're going to fight, what are they fighting for? We need
to control, to take over.
But control, it's not. It's a criminal economy that drives this conflict. Let's be clear about it. It's about heroin. Helmand is not about political power. Why aren't we talking about the criminalization of the economy that makes a senseless conflict possible? Our real enemy is poverty, and we are depriving our people of an opportunity. Afghanistan and Pakistan have enormous potential to grow, particularly linking with Central Asia, but it's going to require focus and wisdom to bring the proper benefits and not harm.
Mr. President, finally, I was reporting on the flight of so many people into Europe seeking refuge, and I met so many Afghans, young and old, and I asked all of them that I met, why are you leaving Afghanistan? And they say, we have no future there. What do you say to them?
What I say to them is that they have no future in Europe. Europe is shutting down its borders. You had just had an interview with the French Prime Minister. Broadcast that to them.
What is the future?
The future of Afghanistan, the assets that we have, the capability we have, the location, will make us. But did you ask Churchill in the second year of the war as to whether he was going to deliver benefits or whether he was going to deliver tears? We need to understand that they're not two boats, and we need to have a firm mooring in our country so that we can make it prosperous. It can be made prosperous, but it's going to require an enormous effort of will, because the forces, the majority of the people who are inflicting damage on us are not Afghans. And this is a phenomena that unfortunately we have received every negative feature of globalization, and it's time that we receive some of its positive things.
Mr. President, thank you.
Thank you.